Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new episode of the Fintech Hunting Podcast. We have a very special guest for you today. He's an industry thought leader, a technology evangelist. He specializes in automating borrower outreach and streamlining the lending process. Please help me welcome Nick Rutherford, VP of McGlone Mortgage Group. Nick, welcome to the show.
Michael, thank you so much. That intro always gets me so excited, and I'm happy I'm finally on the other end of the camera here to give my insight.
Outstanding. Well, it is great to have you, and you do have a ton of insights for our listeners who might not know you. Tell us a little bit first, how did you get into the mortgage industry, kind of your background in mortgage tech and everything, and then we'll hit the ground running.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit of a mortgage lifer. So the McGlone Mortgage Group, the DBA of Homestead Funding, is owned and operated by my Uncle Mike. He started the company over 30 years ago. So I grew up in the mortgage industry, started working for Homestead in the accounting and secondary marketing departments a little over a decade ago. During my senior year of college, I started full time. So I was, always destined, I think, to be in this industry in one capacity or another.
Fantastic. Well, it's been kind of a crazy year. 2020 was, everything dealt with the pandemic and capacity issues and volume. 2021 really didn't slow up that much. Give me what are some of your key takeaways from 2021?
Well, we really had two different 2021s, right? The first 6 or 8 months of 2021 is a completely different marketplace than the end of 2021. Talking from a CD perspective, I work in a consumer direct lender. The last 4 months have been difficult. I think everyone had the same idea coming off of 2020. Everybody had a great year. You had some extra cash to burn, and what were you going to do with that cash? You saw a lot of companies start consumer direct DBAs. I was involved in a project like that over the past year. And then everyone's investing in tech too. So not only is the space a little bit more condensed, everyone's getting a little smarter in how to market to clients, which creates a unique challenge for a company like ours that thought we had this thing pretty figured out. Our workflows were pretty good. We were doing some consistent business. Now, all of a sudden, there's some new challenges. So it's time to go back to the drawing board, figure out what we can do better outside of lowering margin. The
right.
Easy answer in this business is always make the pricing better, you're going to do more business. But that's not necessarily the profitable business that sets you up for a really good year from the corporate level.
You brought up so many good points that I want to touch upon them. The first one, let's talk a little bit more into consumer direct. And I want to start with kind of what are some of the things, if people want to be successful in consumer direct, what are some of the things from a technology perspective, from kind of a strategy focus, where do they really need to be aligned if they want to have success in consumer direct?
The place that I always start when I get questions similar to this is you need to understand what kind of consumer direct company you're going to be. Because there's a lot of different ways you can do consumer direct, and I think everyone just throws it into a bucket. You hear consumer direct, and your mind immediately goes to internet lending.
Right.
What does internet lending mean? You can do direct mail, you can do data leads, you can do online aggregation, you can do rate tables. And every one of those things is a viable way to set up your business, but they are wildly different. The type of employee you need, the type of training you need, your workflows in your technology, very, very different. So I always say start with identifying what type of consumer direct company you want to be, and then build out your technologies, your staff, and your workflow from there.
All right, so let's start talking technology, tech stack. It's one of the things everyone loves to talk about, the shiny object, but how do you make sure it fits in within your tech stack? And from your perspective, what are some of the key technology tools, solutions, software that you need in your tech stack?
Yeah, so why don't we start with what you need? And I think that is very that's very dependent on where you are in your cycle of tech. So if you don't have a lot of tech, let's say you're just using an LOS, which is the common starting place for most companies to build out.
Yep.
You have your LOS. I say first, depending on your shop, if you're consumer direct, you need to go CRM first. Your CRM is going to be your lifeblood. It's your mitochondria, for the lack of a better term, of your entire tech stack. Everything runs through CRM. Everything integrates through CRM. Everything begins through CRM. From there, a really strong POS, I think, is helpful. So I'd go LOS, CRM, POS. Then you can start having some fun. I mean, those tools are great, but then you get into any of your database retention tools, your sales boomerangs, you get into, your early detection tools like your NIA, your shopping signal tools, your credit triggers, any of that stuff that you can really build out, some pretty advanced workflows and try to make sure that every dollar you're spending on lead acquisition, you're at least giving it the 100% best opportunity to succeed.
So let's talk CRMs a little bit. What do you look for in a CRM? If you have any, CRMs that you highly recommend, walk us through that a little bit. Because like you said, it's one of the cornerstones. If you're going to be doing consumer direct, yes, everyone's got an LOS. I used to sell LOSs for a number of companies for a number of years. I know that space very well. But once you kind of have that system of record, you've got to have a way to engage with the borrower. So walk me through that a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm an Accelerate guy. We were on Velocify when I started at McGlone. We made the switch to Accelerate. And the place I always start with CD workflow is like, what does the user UI look like and what are the lead management tools? Because no matter what bells and whistles you have, no matter what your system can do, if your people can't easily access and identify their leads and have a clear and concise workflow, then what good is all of the other stuff? Because if we're being honest, loan officers don't necessarily care what me or my CRM team set up in the background, what kind of automation, how intricate it is. That's not really their top of mind. Their top of mind is, how do I get my leads? How do I know what status they're in? How do I work them? How do I move on to the next one? So I start there. If you can't do that, conversation's over. Then we can get into all of the minutia of how easily do you integrate with other partners? What opportunities are there for marketing journeys or customized workflows or any of those things that, I tend to geek out a little more on than your basic UI, but the basic UI is so important.
Well, and I love your starting point because I think so many people get enamored with, can I send out a text message? Can I send out a video? Am I doing some retargeting? And while all of those things are important, like you said, if you don't have the flow, if it's not easily, readily available to that loan officer, if they can't see the loans they're working on, what the process is, what the next step is, then it's just a lot of activity on the back end that the LO really doesn't care about. So I love that you talked about that. Now let's geek out a little bit. You're a tech guy. We're on a Fintech Hunting Podcast. What are some more of the power user things that you see that you can do in a platform such as an Accelerate that has really been able to give you guys some uplift in greater customer acquisition?
Yeah, and I want to take a step back a little bit because I think that this is really, really important. When we start talking about these advanced things that you can do, it really needs to start at your implementation of whatever piece of tech that it is. And the analogy I've come up with the way these tech integrations work is, let's say you're buying a new stove for your house and you get the Viking stove with the range, the top of the line. And the guy from Viking comes over and he hooks it up and he shows you how to turn all the knobs and he shows you how to turn it on. And you say, this is great. This thing's awesome. I'm going to be able to do so many things. And then I walk in your house and I say, Michael, make me a creme brulee. And you say, well, I don't know how to do that. All I know how to do is turn the knobs. I know how to turn it on. Nobody ever taught me how to do all of the other things. So I think it's important with your implementation teams to have somebody, whether it's a CRM admin, whether it's somebody who's dedicated to sales and sales workflow, to be a part of that experience in the beginning. So you can understand the functionality, you understand how the system works, what the systems can do, and then you can implement advanced workflows and you can train people properly on the expectation and how that workflow works for your company, not how it works at a large overarching, I build the system for JP Morgan and Quicken Loans, and I also build it for the one loan officer that's working out of his house that wants, some of these tools.
Right. Well, I hope the listeners are taking notes. They're going to go back and replay that because I think what you just said applies Whether you're implementing a CRM, an LOS, a POS, a new online application tool, whatever tech you're looking at for your tech stack, it's not just a matter of features and functions, but more importantly, understanding what it does to your business, how it integrates with the other components, so that you can put people in a position to succeed, and more importantly, really know the power of what you have in those applications. Great insight.
I mean, I couldn't agree more.
Well,
we spend so much money on these tools, and we're trying to get the most out of them. And I think to all of these companies that we've talked about, to their benefit, they've done a great job in rolling out a great system and having a lot of functionality. And if you've never used one of these systems before, the gain that you're going to see in your business is exponential. I mean, they really do a great job. But their job is kind of done at that point. They roll it out, they get you set up, they give you use cases, and they check in and they help out. But then it's really on you. How do we take it to the next level? And that's something you always need to be looking at. You can never say, hey, I plugged in the CRM. Let's go ahead. We're done. We're going to use it. I plugged in the POS. I'm going to use it. Customize. Make it work for your workflows. Always try to find the little tweak that gets, 1% more applications finished, 1% more contact rate, 1% more whatever. Stack all of those things up. Hopefully at the end of the year, that makes a big, big difference in your business.
Well, in the days of just set it and forget it, and we don't have to worry about it for 6 months or 12 months are long gone. Like you've talked about, consumer direct has changed dramatically over the last year. What approaches people need to take, what their outreach is, what's working, and then having more competition. Because one of the other areas that I see more competition coming in is everything that's happened with the pandemic is retail is looking at more consumer direct principles and strategies to implement. Not everyone, depending on the location and everything else, feels comfortable going to sit at the branch office and talk to someone in the traditional retail sense. So they're now looking at how can they leverage the internet? How can they leverage video? How can they leverage different CRM tools? So I agree with you. There's so much more competition. What are some of the advanced features? So we've talked to the people that are just getting started. We've talked to the importance of implementation. What are some of those advanced features that you use that say, hey, these are some things that I don't think a lot of people are really taking advantage of? But man, I think if they knew the power, they could get an even more significant uplift.
Yeah, so we could talk specifically about Accelerate for a minute.
Fire away, whatever solutions, yep.
I think is great. So something that I'm always looking for on the management side is like, what can I do to highlight certain things and to give our loan officers access to things that might do more business? And something Accelerate's roll about this year is what they call a custom queue. And their custom queue lets me go in and access whatever data set I want and then place it into a workflow for loan officers. So a good example of one that we're rolling out this week is the new loan limits just came out. So we have a nice $100,000 increase about in the loan amount. So why don't we go back through any of our funded loans, and we're using the last 5 years, but use whatever you'd like, with loan amounts over $500,000. These are all people that could potentially benefit from either refining a jumbo or a high balance down to a conforming, or maybe it was a purchase that they want to pull some cash out now that they have that extra $100,000. So not only do you have the extra $100,000, you have the increases in equity we've seen over the past 2 years. There could be some major opportunity. So we can go in, click a couple buttons. Now every loan officer has a queue of every funded loan or even every lead they've spoken to over $500,000. Easily organized. You can set up blast emails. You can set up blast text. They can just go down and work the queue like they would their normal prioritized alerts. I think that's something that maybe everybody wouldn't think about, but that's a huge advantage. You get 1 or 2 deals a loan officer there. We're a team of 30. I mean, that could be $15 million in a month of production.
Absolutely. Well, and what a great example. You and I could keep talking about all of this stuff. Give me some other things from a tech perspective, or what are some other things that you're seeing? Hey, in 2022, this is kind of where we see the market. This is where we want to up our game from technology, from some of the things we're doing to better engage with our borrowers. Give me a little bit of insight from that perspective.
Yeah, so engagement is a great one because I think that the struggle with automation and engagement is always like, how do you find the perfect workflow and the perfect messaging for each borrower? And if we're being honest, it doesn't exist. The conversations that are had, the way they come through their funnel, it doesn't exist. So we need to create something that is kind of close enough to what the borrower is looking for. So one idea that we have for 2022, we have our traditional workflows in our Accelerate. We have a contacted workflow for purchase. I'm going to talk purchase specifically for a minute.
Sure.
We have a contacted workflow, and then we have a house hunting workflow. So, contacted is, I've talked to this borrower. I want to kind of keep in the loop. I want to reach out every so often. House hunting is specifically like, hey, I'm checking out properties. The information and the messaging is around, hey, are you going out to look at a property this weekend, et cetera, et cetera.
How do you put forth the best bid, whatever it may be?
Yep, a little education. But something we realized over this year, and now a new marketing campaign that we're going to roll out, is like, hey, there's a new subset of clients that we're seeing a lot. And this is a client who has decided, I'm going to begin this home buying journey with the loan officer, with the mortgage lender, not with the real estate agent. So we call it like a long-term purchase cycle.
Okay.
Where a lot of our workflows probably didn't work. Our contacted workflow is, you reach out to somebody, you call them 24 hours later, you follow up every 7 days. What are you doing? We're trying to stay sticky. We're trying to stay top of mind. House hunting is geared around looking for properties. What are we doing for this customer who just began, is thinking about getting into this process, might want to buy in 6 months? We didn't have that workflow. And we also didn't have the really good long-range follow-up. If you're not buying for 6 months, I need a 6-month campaign.
Right.
And I need loan officer check-ins, and I need some other things. So in this era where like you might not find a property, you might not get a bid accepted, we need to extend that workflow, and we need to customize that messaging so it works for this subset of borrowers. So now instead of 2 purchase contacted campaigns, we have 3, and hopefully one that I think we're going to utilize a ton, especially like Q1 through like Q3. You see a lot of that purchase business heating up in the spring, April, May, June.
Yep.
But people are going to start looking now. So what do you do to make sure that you have that workflow in place? So by the time they're ready to buy, when hopefully that summer inventory kind of explodes, and we'll see what goes on. But I have a thought that it might if everything stays status quo. What does that workflow look like? We need to build it. And that's direct feedback from loan officers. That's so important. They're telling me, hey, this doesn't really fit. We got to go back and we have to do something different.
Talk to me about, I love that where you just said that's direct feedback from the loan officers. How important is it to get that feedback to incorporate into these workflows so that there's great synergy from what your sales and production teams are doing with what you're trying to accomplish from a marketing perspective of staying sticky and top of mind?
Yeah, so I really say that I feel like I work for the loan officer. They don't work for me. I work for them. My job in setting up tech and workflow is to make their life easier. So I spend a ton of time doing 2 things. Talking to loan officers about, lead source, marketing, et cetera. Is there anything getting in your way? Is there anything really helpful? Is there anything else we could be doing? And then at the same time, my big thing is always, I will never implement anything and I will never ask you to do anything if I don't get on and talk to you about it and train you on it. You're never going to see something in your queue that it's, what's this, what's that? We're going to get on. We're going to have a conversation. This is what we're doing. This is the expectation of it. Now give me your feedback. And if we have time to tweak it before, we'll tweak it. If we want to roll it out, see how it works, and then tweak it, always be ready and then be hyper vigilant with anything new. New tech, new workflow, new anything. The first couple weeks, make sure it's working right. Go in, dig into your feedback, dig into your data from whatever your system is. See if it's working the way that you expect it to, and then just reach out to those loan officers. How's this working? Are you liking this? Are you seeing benefit? I mean, if they say no, it's obviously something I cared about because I implemented it. If they say they're not seeing benefit, what do I need to do to either show them that the benefit's there or tweak the workflow so we can see the benefit?
Oh, great insights. You and I could keep talking for hours. We've only got a couple minutes left. What would you leave with people when they're looking for solutions, what they should look for, how should they do some due diligence, what type of questions should they ask so that they get this right technology to fit within their stack and within their flow?
Yep. I would say, especially if you haven't done a lot of searching for different tech, just look at everything. Whether you think you found the product that you're going to buy first, look at everything. Take a bunch of demos, because there's always things that you can learn from different companies. So even if you've identified the piece that you want, or somebody told you, hey, this is the stack, go look at a lot of things, because you'll learn a whole lot. And I always say, I like to pick tech partners that see the future of this industry in the same way that I see it. So then we're always building towards a common goal. If you see the need for heavier integrations and more granular workflows, which is something that I see as the future of this industry, you're going to be working on that with your teams. Yep. It's going to be in your sprint. It's going to be in your roadmap. It's not something I need to constantly press. Hey, I need you to do this. This needs to work that way. I find most of the time when I say that, they go, yeah, we're already working on that. Don't worry about it. It's coming out in the next sprint, and then you'll get it. And I mean, I like, as somebody who really has my hands around these things and spend a lot of time with it, I like partners that value the opinions of their customers, because I have a lot of thoughts. I think we all have a lot of thoughts, and you want that input to be heard. You don't just want, hey, whoever's paying the biggest bill dictates the future of the company. You want the company to say, whoever we think are our smartest or our most in tune lenders, or the ones who use the system the best, we want that feedback too. So both are going to matter, but having a voice being, kind of a mid-sized IMB, having a voice, in some of those rooms, I think is important, because I think we have good ideas within our building, and, we're happy that, our partners want to hear that every now and again.
Nick, you have so many great insights. You are welcome back to the Fintech Hunting Podcast anytime. Thank you so much for being a guest on this episode of the Fintech Hunting Podcast.
Great, Michael. Thanks for having me.